A cult begins when a single individual can significantly alter another person's thought processes. As the leader of a cult begins to gain control over another person, previously outlandish thoughts no longer seem to be so strange. Even in the fantasy realm, normal people who do not possess power yearn for the ability to change the world with their own hands. It is in this fashion that most cults start, with a person at the head of it all, promising change that an entity under the skin desires to see. In Cultist Simulator, it is normally your job to direct the members of your cult to do explorations and gather esoteric material in order to increase your understanding of the house with no walls. This place, the Mansis, is contained in the dream world. In that place, your character finds a way to different locations that can grant them scraps of knowledge, powers, or in rare cases, items that can be used in your playthrough. Every playthrough is different. Different factors come into play at different times, and you may not always wind up with the same information each game, but the goal remains the same. You must ascend. Inside the game, there are several aspects that govern each of the lores that a person can discover. Secret histories, Knock, Lantern, Moth, Edge, Forge, Heart, Grail, and Winter. Each one of these has 7 levels of significance, and they can also be combined into higher lore with the right choices. Knowing all of this, why don't we take a look at how cults can function in a game? In Dungeons & Dragons, for instance, cults are mostly found worshipping demons and devils, and their goals align with those entities. For example, a cult that follows the devil lord Mammon wishes for wealth beyond measure, but also the ability to deny that wealth to others, while the cult of Levistus desires both to survive against all odds and revenge for any slight done against them. They gain special spells and traits for their service towards their patrons' goals. In games like Call of Cthulhu, most cults are comprised of men and women driven mad by ancient texts, artifacts, and knowledge they should never even have glimpsed. Even then, some of them are quite adept at hiding their insanity from the public eye. They gain a measure of a connection with the great old beings beyond the veil, and can channel that energy in their service. In video games, games like Silent Hill featured a cult of an entire town that had brought hordes of unspeakable beings through to their world. Some of them were shaped as people, twisted by their summoner's desires. Others were just shambling mounds of abject terror that pursued the player without remorse. Far Cry 5 was different. It featured a doomsday cult based in current religious fanaticism, but they were simply people with guns and influence trying to bring about the change they desired to see. All of these cults seem to have a few things in common: a desire for some type of control of their space, the means in which to accomplish their goals, and the drive to see their world changed. Now, if I wanted to break that information down for use in another space, such as Tabletop, all it would take is little tweaking. Imagine, if you will, a group of players who are murdering without hesitation, defeating any and all challengers to their authority. These particular characters will gain notoriety in the world that they're in, and the people will either stay away from them or seek to stop them. But a select few will offer their services in an attempt to gain access to that power. This is where the things I've mentioned will come into play. For instance, where secret histories are normally relegated in Cultist Simulator as a location to explore, They could also be given to your players at their table as forbidden spells and maybe magic. Forgotten, ancient magic. Another aspect, edge, is normally used as a measure of a person's ability to kill other people. And as your table, they could be defined maybe as a weapon or perhaps a powerful enchantment for an item. If your players show interest in this, using these fragments from the game can open up entirely new avenues of gameplay. Perhaps they discover a rare dagger. After identifying it, they discover that it is both tied to the lore of Edge, and that it gives whoever wields it advantage in the first time they use it for combat for the encounter. The rogue in your party would probably go for that weapon. But how about Moth? In Cultist Simulator, Moth is the lore for chaos and yearning. In that instance, maybe a Moth item might be a doll that could be thrown and used to switch places with the last person who touched it over a distance. If these players receive these gifts from an NPC who may or may not be happy to die for them and like them, they may seek more of them. Perhaps they see use in the NPC who discovered and brought the items to them. If your players continue down this road to discover more powerful objects, you can now open up other avenues in Cultist Simulator. One of the first things you discover in the game is that resting is intrinsically tied with dreaming, and perhaps you can let a clever player into the mansis for the first time. There, they'd be able to discover the wood and beyond, and perhaps their first taste of their own occult lore. As your players discuss what to do with the items and occult scraps that they have discovered, perhaps send a new NPC, or use the old one if they survived, to serve them in their cause. If they choose to accept, this would be a good time to allow them to use those items to lay the groundwork for their organization. If they do, your players have now officially started a cult of their own. That NPC could mechanically be a hireling or a regular cultist that will aid the player characters. And if they haven't done it already, have the first person locate a base of operations and have them move on in. Try to keep track of what they do so you can give them the appropriate rewards. If they choose to hoard wealth, they may identify as a cult of the forge. While surviving an encounter and concocting plans to exact revenge against an enemy might be classified as an aspect of winter. The type of cult your players want to see should be tied to whatever principle they use the most. Perhaps everyone at the table likes puzzles and riddles. Ties to lantern lore may be a more appropriate fit for this game. If your players prefer heists and larceny, perhaps then Knock is the best choice for them. Even a romantic style game is in the cards if you choose to drink deep of the Grail. Give them the tools from that respective principle and watch. From there, the next thing the game truly gives you is a place to find more lore of the esoteric. Somewhere out there is a bookstore that is owned by a certain individual named Moreland. Perhaps you can give them a letter of invite, provided they have the coin. Even if your players decide to execute Moreland without reason, it would not truly change the fact that they have now discovered a place of books and forbidden knowledge of the principles. Though it is important to remember that this action might cause an investigation or have them start their first run-in with the hunter. It is at this point that exploration may become the key factor in the campaign. Though secret histories do lead to new locations, where you're normally able to gather more items and different scraps of lore as well. You would send out your cultists to investigate in the game and pay their way with their skills to help secure the objects in the vault. But here in Tabletop, this is the perfect opportunity to leave the housekeeping to the cultist and the adventure and discovery to your players. On an expedition, you generally run into different obstacles such as locked doors, traps, guardians, and even curses designed to keep the treasures sealed and hidden. Set up a dungeon of your liking and have them get through it to gain their desires, and with it, perhaps an object used in an ascension ritual, a powerful artifact that might make them behave a little differently the longer they stay in touch with it. If everything is going well, your players might be tempted by the prospect of ascending. This, truly, is the final piece of the puzzle, and something both the game master and the party themselves can discover together. Cultist Simulator gives you a temptation that changes over time. This temptation can be something as simple as power, or perhaps enlightenment. Depending on how your players play, you can opt to tie this into whatever their current goals are. Don't forget to have a little fun while letting them chase what they desire. Have that hunter or the authorities foil a plan by raiding a place before they could get there. Encourage the use of these powers and esoteric items and create a complication that they weren't expecting. Send more NPCs to be recruited by your players. Let the world catch wind of them as they're on a mission to gather materials to build a massive alien structure that they found the blueprints for in the core of some strange living forest. Go wild. In both Cultist Simulator and Tabletop, you gather strength and knowledge until you can cross that final finish line. In Cultist Simulator, that finish line involves a ritual of grand proportion, a high amount of power associated with a specific principle, and your temptation to have become a dedication for ascension. Certain tools, lore, and even NPCs can be sacrificed to achieve these goals, but the players always run a risk of turning their cult against them if they're really reckless about using their own followers as sacrifices. As the game master, you have control over how hard you believe the players have to work to ascend. And of course, don't forget that if you and your party expect a final battle front finale, it's perfectly acceptable to have some heroes who have caught wind of the cult to come bursting in at the last moment. Give them that grand puzzle, a magical transformation, or that battle we just discussed so that they enjoy their last moments before they ascend into the Mansis. Well, what now? In Cultist Simulator, your game is considered a minor victory. There are even more things beyond that point, however. More lore, more direct adversaries, more followers and books, and a new party that may seek to further the work of the previous one, or undo it utterly, leaving everything in ruins. If this game was fun and your players want more of it, why not play again in the world you've built? The choice is yours. Fun is the ultimate aim, after all. Hey y'all, this is OmnisX. I hope you enjoyed this video as well as some of the ideas I presented here. Even if you don't run an evil game, I think some of these concepts can be used to modify or create more existing complex cults in your game. Evil can take so many different shapes and forms, and if you decide this is the route for you, it's probably important for everyone involved to sit together and set some safety tools to deal with whatever's happening in the game. Some of the actions that are available to your cultist and or the party could walk a very fine line between being A-okay to play and completely unnecessary. So make sure to sit down with everybody and discuss X cards, lines, veils, and any other tools that might be necessary for everyone to have a good time. Also, tell me what you think in the comments, or if you can come up with any magical items or tools that you would come up with in this setting. If you want me to make another video and craft some stuff that may be useful, go ahead and let me know. Also, as a final note, there are some things in the game I still have not done or discovered. Cultist Simulator is a very enjoyable game, and if you have time, please give it a shot. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.